Okay, can you hear me all right? Cool. So I will be presenting a qualitative analysis of Discovery Talk, how lay people have supportive conversations before and after training. But before that, I just wanted to kind of establish why we need this research in the first place. There's a huge mental health epidemic, as many of you probably know. And we currently aren't doing enough to deal with that. So we need some disruptive innovations that really shake up the status quo. And what we propose is that lay people can have supportive conversations to help with mental health where therapists can't. So what do we know about effective training programs for non-specialists? Well, we know that we need to have active learning. You need to get people up and involved in the learning process, and they're not just passive participants who are getting knowledge thrown at them. You need to involve them. The second thing is you want a simple, scalable protocol. If you have to train someone in all of these principles of assessment, all of these different disorders, how to treat, and it just becomes overly complicated, and it suddenly takes much longer and much more cost to train someone, which is why many researchers argue for a transdiagnostic approach to supportive conversations that works across many different manifestations of psychological distress. And this fourth point, it's actually often underutilized, which is building upon the trainee's previous experiences and approach. But it intuitively makes sense. If someone knows how to actively listen, we don't need to teach them a second time. So, introducing Discovery Talk. Discovery Talk is grounded in perceptual control theory and the therapy based on perceptual control theory, Method of Levels. Method of Levels is transdiagnostic. It aims to resolve conflicting goals outside of awareness, and the way that it does that is by following these two aims. So that's giving control to the person who's talking so that they can sustain awareness on a problem and to notice disruptions in their speech and behavior so that they might incite reorganization and think of their problems in a new way. Discovery Talk aims to train non-specialists in these two goals so that they can have better supportive conversations. The way that it does this is by using this training protocol. So the first step is to make sure that the trainee understands it. This happens in a very conversational approach. It's understanding what they're currently doing and giving them an alternative. So what if you tried using more curious questioning? So that's the goal of Discovery Talk, is to make sure that they understand it. And then after that, there's a demonstration. So the two trainers act out Discovery Talk and really show what it's supposed to look like. And then finally, the trainee gets a chance to actually do it, whether they're speaking and experiencing Discovery Talk for themselves, or they're being a listener and receiving feedback on their approach. Okay, so the method that we used for this study. We recruited 14 participants from Curtin University to be trained in Discovery Talk, and we had interviews before training and after training. So the interview was developed by consultation with MOL therapists and with some preliminary pilot testing with 2 people before the study started. Participants would be in contact with Isabeau to set up a time for the pre-training and the first training interview. In the pre-training interview, we were interested in what people's current approach to supportive conversations were. That way we could understand how it changed after they received training. The training itself consisted of 3 one-hour sessions delivered weekly, and after each training session, people would have a practice supportive conversation with a friend, a family member, or another student to really learn about it in the real world and then bring that experience to the next training session. In the post-training interview, we asked about how their approach changed after training and what they found helpful about the protocol that brought about that change. The data analysis that we used was a reflexive thematic analysis. I wanted a data analysis that was inductive and was built upon the data, but I also really wanted to feel like it was capturing the experiences. So we took a very positivist epistemology. It's this is what happened in our training. It's less focused on the meanings and interpretations. So throughout the process, I familiarized myself with the data, I corrected errors in the transcripts, and I had initial coding, a lot of initial codes to begin with, but from those codes, I could generate some initial themes. These codes and themes were put into an inductive codebook. This inductive codebook was discussed in meetings with my supervisors, where I could further refine and gather ideas about it. So afterwards, I wrote up the report, of course. The analysis was guided by PCT and ML therapy, and it was managed by other non-directive therapies, like the person-centered approach. Also reflexive journaling during the data collection and analysis. Okay, so the interesting bit, here's what we found. We found that at pre-training, participants had two predominant approaches, practicality and exploration. In a practical approach, I'm trying to understand your problem so I can provide you a solution. In exploration, I'm letting you take the control of the conversation so that you can kind of come to your own solution. This here is the goal of Discovery Talk. We want people to explore people's problems rather than to provide practical solutions for them. But in the pre-training, we found that people did have aspects of exploration, but this was often suppressed or kind of buried under the need to find a practical solution. In the post-training, people were really withholding practicality so they could fully engage in exploration. I'll present the pre-training findings alongside the post-training findings in the next couple of slides. The first aspect of practicality is providing advice. I'm telling you what you should do to solve your problem. So 12 participants were using this at the beginning. It's a direct solution, but they also recognized some drawbacks to it. I require personal experience to give advice. I can't give advice if I've never had any experience with that. So here's some quotes to explain why people gave advice. It gives a possible solution to the problem. Okay, it's possible to solve this and there's a practical way to do it. There's that concept of practicality coming back into it. But the participants also recognized some drawbacks, mainly it was preventing exploration. So here's something, people might just want to be heard. It's recognizing that advice is preventing that exploration. After training, people realize this as well. So here's a quote. I don't give advice anymore unless I've been asked for advice. And surprisingly, I've not been asked for advice in the time that I've been using Discovery Talk. It's kind of inspired a bit of self-reflection and realization that many people don't actually want advice, they just want to explore. The next one is problem solving. Problem solving is working collaboratively, but it's very solution oriented. So we're still talking, but I'm talking to give you a solution by the end of it. So solutions were prioritized at the end. So here's a quote. We're trying to come up with something together. It's kind of walking with them in the problem and just exploring different options rather than explicitly advising them. After training, participants were no longer trying to find solutions. It was very non-directed. It was just talking about a problem and letting them come to their own solutions rather than finding them for them. So here's what someone said. It's easier on us because we just have to listen. It's a lot easier than trying to figure out a solution. The next sub-theme is understanding. People wanted to understand a problem before providing advice. So the way they did this was often asking questions. As we'll discuss in the next themes, this could be pretty close-ended questions. Like if I have a tech issue, I might ask, have you tried turning it off and on again? Like very simple understanding problems to know what they've already tried. So here's what some of it. Most of the questions I would ask you to help my understanding rather than to probe me into thinking about stuff. After training, participants tried to stop understanding to remain curious. So this person recognizes that the questions were before them, before training, and then afterwards the questions became part of the process to bring about their own solution. And they were leading the conversation. So they were using closed-ended questions, they were interrupting, and they were trying to understand and provide advice rather than to explore. Afterwards, participants were giving the recipient control. They were helping the other person talk through their problems without feeling the need to provide those practical solutions. So yeah, here's a quote. I think I used to try and control a little bit too much, whereas now I take a more reserved seat. So the first theme of exploration was withholding practicality. Even in the pre-training approach, people recognized that they needed to withhold practicality to engage in exploration. So people would describe it as letting them vent, like, you just talk about your problems, I'm not gonna interrupt, I'm just gonna let you talk. And they also recognized that advice was hindering exploration, which is why they would offer it voluntarily. They'd say, well, do you want advice? Or if they couldn't give advice, they'd just listen. Afterwards, people recognized that this is the goal they should have. They should be withholding practicality because they no longer needed to find that solution. They could just talk. The next sub-theme is listening. People described themselves as a listener, but it wasn't, the definition of listening changed after, because people thought they were listening, but really they were more so like listening to provide solutions. So here's what someone said. Why would they be sharing with me if they are just talking and not seeking solutions? Mm-hmm. There's almost like this failure to recognize the value of just being heard, which we kind of recognize in Discovery Talk and MOL, that being heard is one of the main values. So when people stopped providing practical solutions, they could just fully engage in the listening and exploration process, as this person found out. My mind automatically would go into a mode to search for advice, opinions. But right now, whenever I listen to somebody, I'm actively listening. On the back of my mind, I'm not thinking about anything else, I'm just listening. The next sub-theme is remaining curious. So instead of trying to ask questions for understanding, they try to continue the questions, keep remaining curious. And a lot of people weren't really doing this at the pre-training. As you can see here, only 3 people remained curious. People would ask questions, but their questions would be to understand a problem, and it would inform their practicality. So someone described it here, but yeah, most people they want to find the root cause, solve the root cause, and then you solve the problem. So they're trying to remain curious to understand the problem, but then when they understand it, they provide a solution. They don't let the other person really think it through. Afterwards, 10 participants described remaining curious. So quite a leap. They ask questions curiously instead of trying to provide a set of questions for problem solving. So as this person recognized, when they remained curious, they were also listening more. The next sub-theme is own solutions. So instead of providing a solution, you let them come to their own. So only 5 participants described someone coming to their own solution at pre-training. And this could be explained by how many people were providing solutions before. They were not letting them come to their own solutions because they just give them one. So some people would recognize the benefits, and some people would even recognize that exploration would bring it about. But yeah, that practicality came in, and like I said before, that practicality was just kind of killing chances of exploration. After training, the participants had a method to bring about their own solution. It wasn't just, a thing that happened. It was because they were remaining curious. It was because they were trying not to understand and listen. So it really helped bring about their own solutions. So here's what someone said. The speaker came to their own solution without me having to suggest solutions or offer my own advice. The next sub-theme is empathy. Empathy is helpful across both approaches. It's trying to understand the other person. So it helps in a practical approach because if I understand you better, I can provide a better solution. But it's also directive. I'm still trying to find a solution. I'm stepping into your shoes, which according to PCT, we know it doesn't work. I can't do that. So here's what someone described empathy as, according to Remaining Curious, which I think is quite powerful. So empathy is a non-stop endeavor in trying to understand the other person and trying to stand in their shoes, in their position, and being open to yourself being wrong. So that's quite a curious definition. But most people, when they were describing empathy, were using it to provide practical solutions, like this person. I'm trying to put myself in that person's shoes and see what I would do in that situation. And then when they understood what they would do, they would just tell the other person, I would do this. Afterwards, they had a non-directional conversational approach. They were closer to Roger's definition, where you weren't trying to direct the conversation onto a solution. You're just having an empathetic, natural conversation. So this person describes that I still feel quite involved, probably not with the problem so much as the process of sorting that out. So yeah, they're not trying to solve the problem, they're trying to help the other person solve the problem. Okay, so some more findings that were specific to the post-training. So a very valuable part of the protocol was learning in triads, really observing it, getting a chance to speak, and being a listener. Having all of those three roles really helped people kind of pick up the concepts and help it stay with them as well. So yeah, quite about the value of learning triads, and people also benefited from the supportive conversations they had after each training session. Because not only did it give them practice, they could bring it to the next session, get some more feedback, and just recognize the value of Discovery Talk. It's all well and good to see two trainers do it. When you experience it yourself and really see the change that it's bringing about in the person you're talking to, that can be quite a powerful experience that makes you want to learn more about it. So what we found, which is quite profound, is that people really reorganized their approach. It wasn't just a set of techniques that we gave somebody. It's not oh, here's what you should do in this specific conversation. It's, here's a new conversational style for you to adopt, which is more supportive. It's listening. It's not trying to project yourself onto them. And a lot of people described this change as quite permanent, first of all. So yeah, someone said, I can't erase all this from my memory. Now that I've learned all of it, I think it will stay with me. So yeah, it's not just this one thing that you've learned, progressive muscle relaxation. It's okay, I know how to do this thing. It's instead, I know this new approach that helps people. And this was described as quite a profound change in the way that they had conversations. This was one of my favorite quotes from the whole of this research. Someone said, it molded my personality from being an advisor to being someone who can listen to anybody without judgment. And this is a quality I prefer in myself. So yeah, it's, again, that change was permanent, and it was a big reorganization in the way that it helped other people. Okay, so the main takeaway that I would like you to remember from this presentation and from my research is that you can teach people in an exploratory manner of supportive conversation within a very short number of sessions. Remember, all of these permanent changes and all of these changes that were brought about happened in 3 one-hour sessions. So it's not just a whole bunch of learning about CBT and everything. It's, you have this new conversation style in 3 sessions. So it's more effective and scalable to train people to explore problems rather than solve them. Yeah, thank you very much. There's my email if you want to message about it, and yeah, open to questions as well. All right. Or if we're out of time.
For about 2.
Cool. Yeah.
2 questions. Let me check the microphone, please.
Oh, it's on the laptop center table.
We should be able to hear. Oh yeah.
So if you have a question,
Well, you could use
this
the-
one. Or I will connect this one.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Bruce has a question.
Go on, Bruce. You
Okay.
ask yours.
Claire, do you want to ask Bruce through your microphone, please?
Yeah, Bruce, do you have a question?
Turn up volume, turn up volume.
Oh, sorry, wait.
Can't hear you, sorry.
I think, yeah.
Sorry, too many
Bruce,
slides.
you need to start?
Stop share.
I think you
Bruce
might
is
have
muted.
muted
Oh
it.
yeah, so ask him to unmute.
Bruce is on mute at the moment.
So let's start with another question.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could also repeat it.
No, this one is, I think this one is on now. So try it and repeat it anyway.
Okay.
Thank you. I
So
mean,
that
so
just stays there, Isabel.
I've been learning about
Mm.
this method over the last 36 hours or so. This whole thing.
The method level?
Yeah, but this is of course, you know,
There he
strongly
is.
related to the method, right? And there's a couple of like risk factors that, I would, you know, I'm sure there is a solution, but I'd like to hear what kind of, how you guide people. So one worry is that when you're just like taking this kind of curiosity sort of stance, if they know in particular that that's what you're doing, there's a risk that you seem as if you don't really care about the outcome. Because you have no stake in it. You have no stake in the outcome of their process of exploration. So it's just, you sometimes get just a tiny hint that they don't really care. Your therapist doesn't really care. And I wonder how you kind of avoid that impression, right? So it's just a small risk factor.
Mm.
But yeah, I wonder if there's some way you address it, you know?
Yeah, so the question was, there might be a risk factor with the kind of non-directive approach where the person might not feel that you're not involved or don't really care.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. It's interesting because we asked people, we actually have asked the recipients to talk about their experience of receiving Discovery Talk. That was more another person's research, it's kind of tangential, but a lot of people actually feel, the main thing is like feeling heard. When the person's engaging in Discovery Talk, you're not feeling like they're disengaged, you're feeling like they're actually listening to you. And a lot of people really conveyed that in that like kind of feedback form. It's like, some people would even describe it as like, yeah, a very profound difference from the kind of normal conversations they have. And I think it's really just like you can let the other person know that you're doing this, but a lot of people would just do it naturally. That's another part of the reorganization that I forgot to mention, is that like with that reorganization, it changed how they had approached other conversations, like general conversations, because it actually, they found that it did make the other person feel more involved or feel more heard in that.
I mean, I can imagine a psychopath following this method, right, as a therapist, a psychopath therapist, following the rules, and like just not giving a shit what they say really. But you know, going through all the motions of hearing them. But what I kind of take from the Rogers approach is that you genuinely want them to do well in life.
Just
Yeah,
to
right,
pause,
that has
Tom,
to
so I guess you can care about them finding a solution,
Yeah.
but you just can't be specific about how they're going to do
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
when they're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
do it, what it is.
So
So
it's
you
just
can't
like
have
having
your
that-
cake. You can have your cake and eat it.
Yeah.
So you're guiding them.
And you're devoting
you've got
that
to
time
have
because you care
implicit
so
in the
much.
background, you want them to find a solution.
Yeah.
Right, that's got to be there as well. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
no,
you
of course,
can't
right, it has to
specify
be
when
in
and
the-
how.
Because your psychopath comes into the training, it's like, okay, cool, I got it.
I can read it to you, Claire,
What
if you
would
want.
motivate a psychopath to go
Alright.
into that training
For
anyway?
manipulation purposes.
We might just wrap up this question and get on to
Sorry,
Bruce as well.
yeah, I don't want to
It's
do
So
the
we can
direct
have time.
opposite, but yeah.
Bruce mentioned that it wasn't working before, so we want to try again with audio or just for Bruce?
Try it because I turned
He's
off.
off now, yeah. You can speak.
Could you say something, please, Bruce? I'll ask you a question again. Yours?
No,
No.
not yet.
Okay,
No,
just
Right.
we'll fix that later.
Do
Yeah.
you want me to
Yeah.
read?
Yeah, we can't hear you, sorry.
I hope
So
we can hear
that's
that.
gonna fix that later.
So he said at the end of Kent's presentation he focused on the benefit of PCT for improving social systems and relations. Training individuals in this way is a bottom-up way to affect that relationship by relationship, conversation by conversation.
Yeah.
More of a comment.
Oh, yeah. I kind of want to relate that to like another finding from a different study. So there was this study about Danish general practitioners learning CBT over 2 years. It's a whole training program about learning this new talk therapy approach. And by the end, the authors concluded that it didn't really work because the general practitioners had this style they developed, and this CBT approach didn't really consider that style. And they found that it would have just been better to have trained the general practitioners in a more generic approach that taught them how to have better conversations, better questions that they could use in therapy and their consultations. So yeah, it's definitely applicable to a wide range of professions, yeah.
But Bruce's point about if people start to have these conversations, it can start to make systemic change. I think
That's
that would
right.
be
Oh.
That's the whole
fabulous.
point of it.
Socially.
That's our
Yeah,
goal.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of why it's a bit of a disruptive mental health innovation, because it would really change things, I think.
I think Bruce's comment was more towards the answer.
Yeah.
Really, really well done,
We need
Claire.
that now.
Perfect talk, thank you. That one is empty, you should try the other one.
Okay, our next speaker is Dag Forsell
Is he there?
for his session on translating
Oh, yeah, there.
PCT and MOL books. So I think you'll just have to share your screen.
Let's see if the sound
Can you
works.
unmute yourself, Dan, just to check
Yeah.
you've got the
Something
wrong guy?
happens. An option came up like your speakers.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.